Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Rock Talk.
All right, welcome back to Grok Talk. I am Steve McDonald here with Mike Rogers. Skip has the week off. Coming up in the next hour, don't forget, Jody Underwood will be joining us to talk about a school choice bill currently getting pummeled to death and altered in ways unnatural in the New Hampshire legislature. But for now, let's meet our next guest. Our next guest is a senior fellow with the Catholic Association, the Richard John Newhouse Fellow at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, a staff writer at acculturated.com, a contributing editor at the Institute for Family Studies, a policy fellow with the American Conservative Union, and a founding editor of AltFem magazine. Please welcome to the program Ashley McGuire. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for we booked this weeks ago, and every time we do that, sometimes everybody forgets me or the guest. So great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on. I know we want to talk about Merrick Garland, the 999 thing and everything else, but before we do that, obviously there was some really big news that broke Thursday, and that was the letter from the Obama administration about the transgender public school bathroom situation. And I just wanted to see if you had a take on that before we move forward.
Well, that's an issue that's a little bit out of the lane of the Catholic Association, but personally, as, a woman and as a mom, I've been concerned to see the way the issue of safety for women does not seem to be a part of the equation. So I think, we can work for a society where people feel welcome and included, but we absolutely cannot cast aside very serious concerns about safety for children and safety for women. I just saw, as I was scrolling through my Facebook feed last night, some man was caught choking an 8-year-old girl in the women's bathroom.
In Chicago,
the issue here are the perpetrators. What are people doing? What is President Obama's administration going to do to make sure that these sweeping changes don't facilitate perpetrators going into bathrooms, women's bathrooms?
I got muted. I think predator is probably the word you were really looking for there. The ones that go hunting for young or weak prey, and very nasty class of people indeed. And the problem is you can't really easily tell one from the other. Since we're not allowed to call convicts or felons anymore, pretty soon we'll have stigma-free predators with a license to explore. How wonderful is that?
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I was trying to come up with a tricky blogger-type name for this, and I came up with Obama's Open Bathroom Border Sexual Predator Amnesty Protocol. But anyway, we will move on to the matter at hand as soon as I find the right piece of information here. All right, so for those of our listeners who aren't familiar, please explain what the 999 campaign is and what it relates to.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Apparently, there's some campaign underway to get Merrick Garland nominated, obviously, and they're going after Senate candidates. And
okay.
I have that's what my notes say. Anyway.
Well, there's so many different campaigns, and everybody's trying to position it so differently. It's hard to sort of keep track of all the different ways that the left is trying to push this through. But look, at the end of the day, I think the Senate leadership has made it absolutely clear that it's not going to happen. And so I think what the left is doing is trying to threaten that, okay, well, what we're going to do is go after your candidates in vulnerable states, looking at you, Kelly Ayotte and others, and try and pin this on you. But I don't think it's going to work. I really don't. I think that, if anything, it might backfire on them, because I think conservatives what they want to see, what they've been asking for is leadership from their representatives. And I think that someone like Kelly Ayotte is showing tremendous leadership on standing strong and standing with her party, who I think is absolutely right on this, which is to say that absolutely not are we going to let President Obama replace the seat of Antonin Scalia in the middle of one of the most contentious elections in American history, and that we should let the people decide, since voting is already underway in this presidential campaign, who is going to have the power to shape the court for decades to come.
Garland is bad on issues like religious liberty and abortion, things that are important, of course, to both Catholics and conservatives in general. Do you have some examples, say, with regard to religious liberty, of decisions that he's made that demonstrate to people who aren't sure about that?
Oh, sure. Well, let's look at, for example, when he was a lower court judge, D.C. Circuit Court judge, he wanted to deny a rehearing to the Priests for Life on the HHS mandate issue, which, if you're not familiar with that, that is a 5-year legal saga that has turned into the largest religious liberty class action lawsuit in American history. The Obama administration is trying to force everyone, including groups like the Priests for Life and the Little Sisters of the Poor, to use their health care plans to provide things like abortifacients. So when this case got before Merrick Garland, he wanted to deny them a rehearing. Now, it was a vote, and he lost, and they did get the rehearing, and they've now gone on to the Supreme Court. So their case is sitting up there with the Little Sisters of the Poor case. But, I mean, that to a Catholic is absolutely shocking, that you wouldn't even allow a rehearing for the Priests for Life on whether or not they should have to use their health care plan to pay for to provide the abortion pill.
Now, companies like Exxon have already gotten a waiver, the same waiver, correct?
Right, and this is a point that the Little Sisters of the Poor has been stressing, which is all they're asking for is the same treatment as Visa, Exxon, Chevron, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, groups or companies like that that have been given exemptions for financial reasons, and they can't even get an exemption for religious reasons.
So these big companies are too big to fail, or too big to punish, or whatever, or they give too much money to Democrats. But little religious groups, well, who cares about those, right?
Yeah, little religious groups like the Catholic Church, which is the largest non-governmental provider of health care, charitable services, and education to the poor in America.
Now, Merrick Garland's just one example, since you obviously report on this sort of stuff. And we've had Obama in office for 7.5 years, and of course, Bush before that. Looking at judges, do you have a sense of how much ground we're losing as far as protecting religious liberty from the courts, in the courts?
Well, actually, the Supreme Court has issued really kind of back-to-back good rulings for religious liberty. So that's been one sort of silver lining, That's been a real check on President Obama's extremism. You look at the case of Hosanna Tabor, which was a 9-0 decision in favor of religious liberty. This was a case where the Obama administration was trying to force religious institutions or tell them that they don't have the right to make employment decisions based on their religious beliefs, which would have had absolutely sweeping effects. I mean, you could sue the Catholic Church because they don't ordain women. You could sue a conservative synagogue because they don't allow women to become rabbis. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But and the Obama administration's lawyer in that case actually argued that religious institutions should be treated no differently than like a corporation when it comes to employment cases. And this was so shocking to the justices that some of Obama's own appointees said, expressed verbal shock from the bench. But, that was a 9-0 ruling against the Obama administration. Hobby Lobby was a ruling in favor. That was, a tighter victory, but it was a hugely important victory. There's been a couple of other big cases. The circuit courts, the reason the Little Sisters of the Poor are at the Supreme Court is because there's been divided circuit court rulings. But I think overall there's reason to be somewhat optimistic that the courts are saying, wait, hold on, this seems like overreach here for the most part.
We talk about lawfare a lot around here because we're in New Hampshire and we're in the sausage factory of politics, and we see a lot of local corruption, a lot of efforts at intimidation, and to use the legal system as a bulwark against people moving in and trying to alter what a bureaucrat wants or a school board member or a superintendent. I know we have a lot of these high-profile cases, and I agree that, yeah, the Supreme Court has, up to this point, been pretty helpful. Not that it should have ever gotten that far. But do you have any guess at how many smaller cases that people don't hear about where maybe locally you're having religious liberties suppressed by bureaucrats and people like that, and people who are using the courts because it's expensive? If you want to go to court, we had a case here where a school board member couldn't get an electronic copy of a document, so the superintendent made her take him all the way to the state Supreme Court. I mean, that's a lot of money just to fight for a right you already have.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of that. And, at the Beck Fund, they have something that they call a nastygram, where when it's something like this, just an overzealous zoning board or school board member, zoning board saying, you can't build a insert type of, house of worship, a church or a synagogue or a mosque, and they come back and say, actually, sorry, but no, here's the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, here's RLUIPA, here's the Constitution. So there's definitely, you're absolutely right that I'm sure there is a lot of that's going on that we don't hear about. But I also think social media has been a great tool for us in getting those stories out, that like a story like this, you put it up on social media and people get upset. And there's been a lot of cases where, some of these people have been forced to back down. But, there are a lot of important cases that aren't heard enough about. Another one of them is actually their appeal, their certiorari appeal is pending before the Supreme Court. So they're asking the Supreme Court to hear their case. But this is a case out of the state of Washington where some religious pharmacists don't want to be forced to fill the abortion pill. Mm-hmm. And they're being forced, and their circuit court has told them that they have to. And it's a pretty shocking case because, with the HHS mandate cases, it's been about, do you have to pay for it? Do you have to provide it to your employees and your plans? But this is taking it to the next level. This is, do you have to actually fill it yourself, which, to these pharmacists is no different than, performing an abortion, mm-hmm. giving the woman the drug. And so that's an important case to follow. And, I think so much is going to depend on what happens with the Little Sisters of the Poor. But if we have a good ruling, then I think that'll be great, and that'll clear out a lot of the stuff out of the courts, and we can it'll clear up a lot of bandwidth, I think, for people to follow some of these other important cases that are winding their way through the courts.
Speaking of those, are there any others that we should be paying attention to that we probably haven't heard of?
I can't think of it. There's, so many. The one I mentioned right now, Stormins, that's an important case. There was a big case that was just dismissed. It was an ACLU lawsuit against Catholic hospitals in Michigan trying to require doctors to have to provide abortions or to perform abortions. That case is dismissed, but the ACLU is on they just released a report trying to allege the Catholic hospitals are dangerous for women when in fact, as we all know, what's dangerous for women are abortions, and mm-hmm. especially dangerous and lethal for the unborn child. But I think, watching some of those themes is where you're going to see a lot of the action in the months to come.
Do you know of anybody at the ACLU who actually realizes the irony, and that's not the word I'm looking for, that an organization that supposedly exists to defend the Constitution doesn't defend religious liberty?
I don't know. That irony does seem to be lost on them. My colleague wrote a great piece about this for the New York Post last week that I would encourage people to look up because she really points out the contradiction there that, for the groups like the ACLU, it's every liberty except religious liberty.
That's just, it blows my mind. It really does, and I don't know. I like that we've had some success with some of these religious liberty issues, and I don't know, I like the Merrick Garland nomination, the threat. What do you think? Okay, so we have a presidential election. It looks like it's probably going to be Trump and Hillary. Do you think we're going to get a better nominee out of Trump if he wins?
I don't know, but I think what, voters who care about these issues, life and religious liberty, I mean, if, we know where Hillary Clinton is going to be on these issues, and it's bad, bad, bad. We don't know with Trump, and I don't think we're going to get anybody else, and so I think, it's sort of a personal decision for values-based voters, but I think they need, if they want to vote for Trump, he needs to earn their vote and show that he cares about this issue. Where's his list of Supreme Court nominees? Show us that you actually care about one of the most important issues to the base, which is life. We are the party of life and family, and I'm sorry, but I don't think he's done nearly enough to show that we can trust him on that. And there are concrete things that he can do to show that, but he hasn't done it so far. So he needs to do that.
I did read somewhere, and I can't recall where, but somebody said, to be perfectly honest, you can't do much worse than Merrick Garland, so it's worth the risk. So anyway,
right.
We're just about out of time. How would people reach you, and where can they read you?
Sure, you can find us on www.thecatholicassociation.org, and we're active on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter. We put up a lot of our articles and pieces up there, so you can look us up there.
All right, Ashley, thank you so much for taking some time out of your weekend to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Ashley McGuire, Catholic Association, long list of places you can read about what she's writing. I'd like to thank her again for coming on the show. We are going to go into the top of the hour break, and we will be back a little bit after that. And don't forget, 10:40, although I invited her to come sooner, or 10:20, I'm sorry, we will be having Jody Underwood here to talk to us about the school choice bill. Mm-hmm. And who knows what else, because you never know. We might talk about what's going on in her district, and maybe Ian will come with her, and then who knows what we'll talk about when Ian's here. So everybody stick around. We will be back shortly. Stay tuned.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.